Real monsters have no claws or fangs. They arrive with flowers, promises of eternal love and gold rings. They build a life with you, give birth to your children and then, when they are well installed in your heart, they begin to devour your soul piece by piece. And the worst part is, no one hears your screams, because the neighbors only see the perfect family you pretend to be. My name is Josefa Maria de Conseco Santos, but everyone knows me as Dona Finha. I am 85 years old and have been carrying a secret for more than half a century that has corroded my soul like rust on scrap metal. I was born and raised in Garanhuns, a small town in the interior of Pernambuco, where the mornings are cold and the nights guard the secrets of traditional families more carefully than the deeds to their properties. Many people around here know me only as the friendly old lady who comes to the Sunday market to buy coconut sweets, always wearing a flowery dress and a scarf covering her white hair. Few people can imagine what I have carried inside my chest since I was 23 years old. Telling this story touches me deeply. So, I want to ask you to like this video and subscribe to the channel. This gives me strength to continue. It makes me feel like my story can help other people. And tell me in the comments where you are watching from. I really want to know who is on the other side listening to me. I feel it's past time to tell my story. Not by me. I have already learned to carry this weight, but for all the women who, like me, face hell at home and remain silent out of fear, shame, or to protect their children. Maybe by hearing my story, someone will find the courage that took me so long to have. My life began simply, like that of any girl from the Pernambuco countryside in the 1940s. My father, Antonio, worked in the cassava fields, waking up when the first rooster crowed and only returning when the stars were already dotting the sky. My mother, Dona Sebastiana, took care of the house, the 5 children and also made lace to sell at the fair. I was the middle one, with 2 older brothers and 2 younger sisters. Our house was small, made of mud, with a dirt floor and a roof that let in patches of sunlight through the cracks during the day. We didn't have much, but we never ran out of food, nor respect for each other. My father, even though he was tired from work, always had a smile for us and never raised his hand to my mother, something rare in those times when the husband was practically the owner of the woman. Girl, study so you don't depend on any man. My mother always said as she taught me the lace stitches. And I studied. I was the only one of the 5 children who completed primary school at the community school. The teacher, Mrs. Eulalia, saw something in me and convinced my parents to let me continue my studies. This girl has light in her eyes, Mr. Antonio. It would be a sin to waste it. With a lot of sacrifice, I managed to complete the normal course and became a teacher at the age of 19. It was 1957 and for a girl from the countryside, the daughter of a farmer, being a teacher was almost a miracle. I remember the pride in my father's eyes when I taught my first class at the little school where I had studied years before. I see your mother in you, but with a book in your hand instead of a needle, he said in a choked voice. For 3 years I taught the children of the town, earning a modest salary that helped at home. The girls my age were already married, many with 1 or 2 children, while I remained single, dedicated to my students. The sharp tongues of the town were unforgiving. You'll be left with your aunt. Too much study scares away husbands, the gossips used to say in conversation circles. I pretended not to care, but deep down I confess that sometimes I felt alone. It was at a Saujao party in 1960 that I met Cicero. He had come from Recife to work as an accountant in the only bank that had opened in the city. He was tall, with fair skin, hair combed with brilliantine and a way of speaking that showed he had studied at a good school. When he asked me to square dance, I felt my heart race like never before. Will you allow me to do this contra dance? He asked with an elegance that no young man there would ever have. I accepted, feeling my face burn with shame and excitement. We danced 3 songs in a row and then he took me to have a passion fruit soda at the stall in the square. I've never seen such a beautiful teacher in my entire life, he said, looking me in the eyes in a way that left me breathless. You trying to embarrass me, Mr. Cicero, I replied, looking down at my glass of soda. That night was the beginning of a relationship that turned the city upside down. An educated man from the capital, interested in Mr. Antonio de Roca's daughter, the same gossips who said I would stay as an aunt were now whispering that I had pulled off a huge scam. Little did they know that Cicero, despite his good job and fine clothes, had no inheritance or important family. He was just a young man who had managed to study with great effort, like me. The relationship continued for 6 months, always with my father or a brother accompanying us on walks around the square or on trips to the movies that had opened in the neighboring city. Cicero was respectful, he never tried to cross the line. He brought simple gifts, a hair ribbon, a chocolate bar, once even a little book of poems that we read together on the porch of the house. "I want to marry Miss Josepha," he said one December night under the jabuticaba tree in the backyard with my older brother watching from afar. "If your father allows, I want to make you my wife." My heart almost jumped out of my mouth. At 23, I was already beginning to think that marriage was not for me, and now I was there receiving a proposal from an educated, hard-working and, on top of that, handsome man. "I need to think about it, Mr. Cicero," I replied, trying to hide my emotion. But the truth is that there was nothing to think about. It was all I could dream of. The following week, Cicero came to talk to my father, bringing a bottle of good kashika and a cigar. They talked for hours in the living room, while my mother, my sisters, and I waited anxiously in the kitchen. When the door opened, my father came in with a serious expression that soon broke into a smile. "Come here, my daughter. Mr. Cicero seems like a respectable man to me. If you want, you have my blessing." The wedding took place in March 1961 in the little church of Nossa Senhora do Bom Parto. It was nothing grand, we did not have the means to that's it, but it was beautiful. My dress was sewn by my mother and aunts, using lace they made themselves. Cicero looked elegant in a navy blue suit borrowed from the bank manager. After the ceremony, there was a small party in the backyard with food prepared by the women in the family and music played by local guitarists. Our house was small, but it was ours. Cicero had rented a 2-bedroom house near the bank, with a living room, kitchen, and even a bathroom inside. A luxury I had never had. In the first few months, I lived the dream that every young woman of my time had. Cicero was attentive, he brought me flowers he had picked on the way back from work, he complimented my cooking, even when I had cooked the beans wrong, and in the evenings he was affectionate and respectful. I continued teaching even after I got married. Many husbands wouldn't allow it, but Cicero seemed proud to have a teacher wife. "My wife has to show that she's smart too," he would say when someone questioned me. I felt like the luckiest woman in the world. When I found out that I was pregnant, 6 months after the wedding, the happiness seemed complete. Cicero cried when I told him, his hands trembling as he touched my still flat belly. "Is it going to be a beautiful girl like you, Josepha?" he said with certainty, as if he could see the future. And he was right. Mariana was born on a hot January morning in 1962, after a difficult labor that lasted almost 20 hours. When the doctor put her in my arms, all red and crying loudly, I felt like I had never loved anyone so much in my entire life. And when I looked at Cicero, I saw the same love overflowing on his face. "She has such fine eyes," he said, using for the first time the nickname that everyone would later adopt. At that moment, I thought I had achieved perfect happiness. A loving husband, a healthy daughter, a profession I loved. What more could a woman want? Little did I know that this was just the beginning of the story, and that the man I saw as my safe haven held within himself a storm that would destroy everything we had built. As my mother always said, the devil wears a suit and tie and smiles in your face before showing his claws, but that's too painful a part to tell you now. I'll need some time to gather my strength and continue this story at our next meeting. In the meantime, I would like you to reflect. How many times do we judge a book by its cover? How many times the monster that destroys us is the one we swore to love until death do us part? If this story is touching your heart, please like, subscribe to the channel and share it with anyone you think needs to hear it. Sometimes listening to someone else's pain is the first step to healing our own. The first few weeks after Mariana was born were filled with pure joy, even with the tiredness from sleepless nights and the insecurities of being a first-time mother. Cicero showed himself to be a dedicated father. He came back from the bank early to help me. He changed diapers without making a face and sang our daughter to sleep with a voice I didn't even know he had. Our nights, previously filled with conversations about the future, were now dedicated to that little person who had arrived to complete our family. "She has your little nose," he said proudly, leaning over the crib that my carpenter brother had made for his niece. And there I was, thinking I had built paradise on earth with a family that seemed to have come straight out of the love stories I told my students. When Mariana was 3 months old, I went back to teaching. It was hard to leave her, even knowing that she would be in the care of my sister-in-law, who lived 2 streets down from us. But feeling the chalk between my fingers again, seeing the anxious little faces of the children, that was also part of who I was. Cicero supported my decision, although he occasionally let it slip that when we have more children, it might be better to stay home. I agreed without much thought. At that time, a woman working outside the home was almost a revolution. Mariana's first year flew by like a leaf in the wind. Soon she was crawling all over the house, smiling with those two bottom teeth that had just come in, calling Cicero Papa before even calling me Mommy. He melted all over. I bought toys that we couldn't afford. I made plans for when she grew up. I'm going to put our princess in a good school, my dear. She's going to be a doctor, a lawyer, whatever she wants. Life went on. Mariana grew up strong and healthy, happy as a little bird. I continued teaching, now at the largest school in the city, having been promoted thanks to my effort and dedication. Cicero also prospered at the bank, having been appointed to a supervisory position. In the eyes of everyone in Little Garanhuns, we were the model of a perfect family. It was around Mariana's third birthday that she noticed the first changes in Cicero. Small, almost imperceptible to anyone looking from the outside. I wasn't coming home from work feeling so excited anymore. He complained more about the food, the household expenses, the noise Mariana made while playing. A man works all day, he needs silence when he gets home. He said with an irritation in his voice that I had never heard before. I thought it was just tiredness. The new position came with more responsibilities, more pressure. I tried to be understanding, prepare the dishes he liked, keep Mariana quieter when he arrived. I did everything to please him, to recover that smile that had won me over at the Sao Joao festival years ago. One night, Cicero came home from work extremely irritated. There had been a problem with an important account and he blamed one of his subordinate employees. During dinner, he kept talking about it, using words that were too harsh for the man I knew. That incompetent guy will have to deal with me. I'll make him regret ever being born. Calm down, Cicero. I tried to appease him by serving some more meat on his plate. I'm sure it was a mistake. Tomorrow you will resolve this with a cool head. I shouldn't have said anything. He hit the table so hard that the plates jumped, scaring Mariana, who started to cry. Don't tell me what to do, woman. Do you think you understand anything about my work? I was paralyzed. Never in 4 years of marriage had Cicero raised his voice to me like that. The man in front of me, his face contorted in anger, looked like a stranger. I picked Mariana up, trying to calm her down, while he got up and left, slamming the door. He came back late at night, smelling of kashika. She pretended to be asleep when he entered the room, afraid of what might happen. The next morning, he acted as if nothing had happened. He made coffee for the three of us, played with Mariana, and gave me a kiss before leaving for work. I had almost convinced myself that it had been an isolated incident, never to be repeated, but it has been repeated more often than I would like to admit. The outbursts of anger came and went for increasingly silly reasons. One week it was because I had bought a new dress for Mariana without consulting him. In the other because dinner wasn't ready when he arrived. Then because he found a test booklet that I had brought home to correct. You're neglecting your daughter because of those brats who aren't even yours, he shouted, tearing up the sheets of paper where my students had made their best efforts to solve arithmetic problems. I started walking on eggshells inside my own house. He watched every word, every gesture, trying to predict what might trigger the next storm. Mariana, small, more sensitive, also changed. The girl, happy and talkative, now remained quiet when her father was at home, as if she was trying to make herself invisible. The neighbors' questions began. Mrs. Finha, is everything okay? You've been so down, or Mr. Cicero seems so stressed lately. I avoided the subject, kept up appearances. After all, family problems are solved within the family, that's what my mother always said. And I still loved Cicero, or at least the man he had been before. In 1966, when Mariana was 5 years old, he was promoted again, now to agency manager. A prestigious position for such a young man. There was a party at the bank, complete with a speech from the mayor and champagne. The first time I tried it in my life. Cicero was radiant that night. Again the charming, confident man I fell in love with. He introduced me to everyone as my beautiful wife, Professor Josepha, with such pride in his voice that he made me believe that everything could go back to the way it was before. For a few weeks it was like that. He went back to bringing little gifts, complimenting my cooking, playing with Mariana when he got home from work. I began to let my guard down, to allow myself to smile again, without fear of provoking his wrath. It was at this time that I became pregnant for the second time. When I told Cicero about the baby, He hugged me tightly and walked me around the room, just like he did when he found out about Mariana. "We're having a boy this time, come on," he announced as if he could determine it. A son to follow in my footsteps at the bank. Those months of pregnancy were peaceful. Cicero seemed to have tamed his inner demons. Whatever had caused the explosions earlier. At school, I reduced my hours to take better care of my health with the blessing of the principal, who was my friend and confidant. Mariana was excited about the idea of being a big sister, already setting aside some of her toys for the baby who was coming. Our son was born in June 1967. A strong boy, with dark skin like mine and his father's light eyes. Cicero chose the name Ricardo. "An imposing name for a future businessman," he said, holding his son with almost reverent care. At first, everything went well. Cicero divides his time between work and home. On weekends, I took Mariana for walks while I took care of the baby. But then, when Ricardo was about 4 months old, he started getting sick frequently. Nothing serious, colds, small fevers, but enough for sleepless nights, constant crying and accumulated fatigue for all of us. That's when Cicero's behavior began to change again. The complaints returned, more intense than before. Ricardo's crying irritated him deeply. "I can't even think straight with that noise," I shouted, slamming the door of the room where I had retreated to calm our son. Mariana, now 6 years old, became silent and elusive in her father's presence again. One evening, after a particularly difficult day at the bank, Cicero came home late to find the house in disarray. Ricardo had been feverish all day. Mariana had spilled juice on the living room carpet and I was too exhausted to keep everything in order as usual. "What kind of a dump is this?" he shouted as soon as he stepped into the room. "I'm out all day racking my brains to support you guys and this is how you welcome me? Cicero, please," I begged with Ricardo in my arms, still crying with the fever. "The boy is sick." I didn't have time. I couldn't finish the sentence. For the first time he raised his hand against me. The slap hit my face so hard that I staggered back, nearly dropping the baby. Mariana, who was watching everything from the bedroom door, let out a scream that I will never forget. "Daddy, no!" Cicero seemed to come to his senses when he heard his daughter's voice. He looked at his own hand, as if he didn't recognize it, then at me, my face now marked by the redness of the blow, and at Ricardo, who was crying even harder in my lap. Without saying a word, he turned around and left again, leaving only the echo of the door slamming behind him. That night marked the definitive end of any illusions I still had about my marriage. The man I had married, who had promised to love and respect me, had crossed a line that could not be undone. While I was putting ice on my face and rocking Ricardo to sleep, Mariana came over and sat next to me on the bed. "Mommy, why was Daddy so angry?" she asked in a voice so small I could barely hear her. How do you explain to a child that sometimes people change, that something breaks inside them and lets out a darkness that they themselves didn't even know about? "Daddy is very tired, daughter. Sometimes adults do the wrong things when they are tired." It was the only explanation he could find at that moment, although he knew it was insufficient. Mariana nodded, with an understanding beyond her young years, and laid her head in my lap. "It's going to be okay, Mommy. I'll take care of you and Ricardo." My heart broke a little more when I heard that. A child should not feel like he needs to protect his mother. That night, lying with my 2 sleeping children beside me, I promised myself that I would find a way out. For them, I would find the strength to do whatever was necessary. What I didn't know at that moment, as I listened to the light rain falling outside, was that the worst was yet to come, that the true monster that lived inside Cicero had yet to show its most terrible face. And when I finally did, my life would change forever in ways I could never have imagined. When a house begins to collapse, the first signs are almost imperceptible. A small crack in the wall that you cover up with paint, a creak in the woodwork that you ignore, a strange smell that you convince yourself is just your imagination. That's how my marriage began to fall apart, quietly, without fanfare, but with a constancy that I only realize now, looking back. The man I met at the Sao Joao festival, who won me over with his poetry and kindness, was gradually changing, so slowly that I almost didn't notice when that gallant smile began to give way to a closed expression, when his affectionate eyes became cold, when his hands that had previously caressed me began to form fists. After the birth of Ricardo, our second child, things quickly went downhill. The boy was in fragile health in the first few months and cried a lot at night. Needed constant attention. I divided my time between taking care of the baby, paying attention to Mariana, who was only 6 years old, and keeping up with her classes at school. He slept little, ate in a hurry, and even so tried to keep the house in order so as not to give Cicero any reason to complain. But the reasons always emerged. One day it was dinner that wasn't hot enough. In the other were Mariana's toys scattered around the room. Then it was Ricardo who cried a lot. The complaints were accompanied by increasingly harsh looks and increasingly harsh words. "A woman who can't take care of her own house doesn't deserve to be called a wife," he would say, throwing the plate of food into the sink, breaking the crockery that had been a wedding gift from my mother. I would swallow my tears, pick up the pieces, put the children to sleep and lie down next to him in bed, keeping as much distance as possible. I would tell myself that it was just a difficult phase, that Cicero was under pressure at work, that everything would soon go back to normal. "Men have their moments," would say Dona Consico, my older neighbor, when she saw me with red eyes from crying. "You have to be patient, daughter. That's just how marriage is." And I tried to be patient. I prayed every single day, asking God for strength, asking him to bring back Cicero, who I had fallen in love with. But my prayers seemed to fall on deaf ears. The day he hit me for the first time marked the beginning of a new chapter in our marriage. It wasn't just the physical pain that shook me, but the terrible realization that something fundamental had broken. The man who swore to love and respect me before God and the entire community had raised his hand against me. And worse, he had done it in front of our daughter. "Mommy, don't cry," Mariana said, her tiny hands drying my tears as I rocked Ricardo, trying to calm him down after the scandal. "I'll take care of you." Those words coming from such a young child broke my heart. What kind of mother was I who needed comfort from my own daughter? What example was I setting for her about what a woman should accept from a man? In the days that followed, Cicero vacillated between dramatic regrets. Bringing flowers, asking for forgiveness, swearing it would never happen again. And new outbursts, more and more frequent, for more and more foolish reasons. I began to notice changes in Mariana's behavior. The happy, talkative girl who ran around the yard chasing butterflies now walked with her head down, spoke little, and trembled when her father raised his voice. On Sundays, when he took her for a walk in the square, she would come back quiet, with a distant look in her eyes that was out of character for a child her age. "Don't you want to go for a walk with your father anymore, my dear?" I asked her once, when she hid under the bed when she heard Cicero calling. "No, Mommy," she answered, her eyes filled with a fear that alarmed me. "I don't want to be alone with him." Something about the way she said that made my heart ache. I wanted to ask more, try to understand what was behind that fear, but Cicero was already impatiently at the bedroom door. "What is it now? Are you going to start spoiling her like that? Stop being so fussy, girl. Get up and let's go." He pulled her arm hard, dragging her outside, while she looked at me with pleading eyes. I stayed home with Ricardo, restless, with a bad feeling I couldn't name. When they returned, hours later, Mariana ran straight to the bedroom, without looking me in the eyes. Cicero seemed normal, even kind, bringing a bag of candy for both of them. That night, I sat next to Mariana's bed to tell her the story I always asked her to tell me before going to sleep. She was wrapped up in the covers, despite the heat, as if trying to hide from the world. "What happened on the walk today, my dear?" I asked, running my hand through her hair. She was silent for so long that I thought she had fallen asleep. Then, with such a voice in a low voice that I could barely hear, he said, "Daddy took me somewhere. He said it was our secret." "What place, my dear?" "A house at the end of the market street. There's a man there who takes pictures." My blood ran cold in my veins. "Pictures? What kind of pictures?" Mariana cringed even more. "I don't know. Daddy said I had to take off my dress, that it was a special job." He got angry when I cried. I couldn't sleep that night. My head was buzzing with 1,000 horrible thoughts, with the terrible suspicion of what could be happening. I wanted to confront Cicero immediately, but something told me to be careful. If my suspicions were right, confronting him directly could be dangerous for me and the children. The next day, with the excuse of buying bread, I walked down the market street, looking for the house Mariana had mentioned. I found a makeshift photo studio with a discreet sign in front. Not daring to go in, I watched from afar. I saw Cicero arrive, greet the man at the door as if he were an old acquaintance, and go in. I went home trembling, with a bitter certainty forming in my chest. I didn't know exactly what was happening, but I knew it was something wrong, something that was hurting my daughter. In the days that followed, I became more attentive, observing every interaction between Cicero and Mariana. I began to notice things that I had ignored before. The way he insisted on bathing her, even though she was old enough to bathe herself, how he often called her to his lap, even when she clearly didn't want to go. The way he looked at her when he thought no one was looking. One night, I quietly entered Mariana's room and found her crying softly on her pillow. "What is it, my angel?" I asked, sitting down next to her. "Mommy," she sobbed. "I don't want Daddy to come into my room at night anymore. He does things that hurt me." Those words were like a dagger to my heart. For a moment, I was breathless, unable to process what I had just heard. Then, reality hit me full force. My husband, my daughter's father, was abusing her. "What things, Mariana?" I asked with a lump in my throat, needing to hear to be sure, even though each word was torture. Between sobs, she told me details that no child should know, things that no child should experience. She told me about the nights he would come into her room when she thought I was sleeping, about the threats he made so she wouldn't tell anyone, about the pain and confusion she felt. I hugged my daughter tightly, letting my own tears fall freely now. How could I have been so blind? How could I not have realized what was happening under my own roof? Guilt consumed me, mixed with an anger I had never felt before. "Never again, my daughter," I promised, holding her face in my hands. "He will never touch you again. I promise." That same night, while Cicero slept, I packed a small suitcase with some of our clothes and the few important documents we had. I planned to leave at dawn, to take the children to the house of an old teacher colleague who lived in another city. But as I was finishing my preparations, I heard the sound of the bedroom door opening. Cicero was standing, staring at the suitcase on the bed. "What do you think you're doing?" the dangerously calm voice asked. "I'm leaving," I said, trying to sound firm despite the fear that was consuming me. "And I'm taking my children with me." His laugh was cold, cruel. "Do you really think I'm going to let you take my children? Who will be able to survive without me? Who will give you a house, food, clothes? You are nothing without me, Josepha. I'd rather go hungry on the street than spend another day under the same roof as you," I retorted, courage coming from I don't know where. "I know what you've been doing with Mariana. I know about the studio, the photos. I know what you do when you think I'm not looking. You are a monster, Cicero." It was like lighting a fuse. His face twisted into a mask of hatred, and before I could defend myself, I felt the impact of his fist against my face. I fell back, stunned, the metallic taste of blood in my mouth. "You're not going anywhere," he growled, pulling the suitcase away and throwing the clothes on the floor. "And if you open your mouth to say one word about this to anyone, I swear I'll finish you and those kids." Who do you think they will believe? In me, the bank manager respected by everyone, or in you, a hysterical teacher? I lay on the floor, feigning submission, as he continued his threats. Inside, however, something had broken completely. Any shred of love or respect I might still feel for him. In its place was born a fierce determination to protect my children at any cost. That night, as I lay beside the man I now recognized as my enemy, I made a silent oath. I would find a way to get out of that house, to save my children from that man, if it was the last thing I did in my life. What I didn't know was that the opportunity would come sooner than I imagined, on an April night that would change our lives forever. Certain nights remain marked on the soul like scars. The one from April 7, 1969 is one that not even time has been able to erase from my memory. I remember every detail, every sound, every smell as if it happened yesterday, not more than 50 years ago. It was a Wednesday. I remember because it was Novena Day at church and I had come back later. Cicero didn't like my trips to church. He said it was a waste of time to pray when he had a house to take care of. But I insisted. That hour in God's house was the only moment of the week when I felt at peace, far from the fear that had become my constant companion. Ricardo, almost 2 years old, had already gone to bed earlier, exhausted after a whole day running around the yard. Mariana, at 8 years old, should be sleeping too. Cicero had left for a meeting at the bank, or so he said. I got home around 9 and found the silence strange. Normally he would already be back, complaining about my delay. I put my rosary in the dresser drawer, took off my shoes so as not to make noise, and went to check on the children. Ricardo's room was quiet. The boy slept on his stomach, as always. But when I reached the door to Mariana's room, I heard something that made my blood run cold. A muffled, suffocated cry, like someone trying not to make noise, even in despair. And his voice is low, threatening. If you tell your mother, she won't believe you. And if you believe it, he will blame you. I pushed the door open on impulse. The scene I encountered was worse than any nightmare I could have imagined. Mariana huddled against the wall, her face wet with tears, her eyes wide with terror. And Cicero, my God, how can I say this? The man I had chosen to be the father of my children was standing over her, with his pants open. Upon seeing me, his face turned into a mask of fury. What are you doing here? I should be in church. I didn't answer. Something primal took hold of me. A strength I didn't know I had exploded from within my chest. I ran to him and pulled him by the hair with a violence I didn't recognize in myself. He staggered back, surprised by my reaction. I took the opportunity to grab Mariana in my arms and run out of the room. You crazy woman! Come back here, he yelled as he zipped up his pants and came after us. Run, my daughter, take your brother and go to your neighbor Mrs. Carmenha's house. I whispered to Mariana, pushing her towards Ricardo's room. She hesitated, her eyes still filled with dread. Go, daughter, please. I'll hold him back. I don't know where I found the courage. Maybe it was anger. Maybe it was the protective instinct that only a mother knows. When Cicero tried to get past me to get to the children, I placed myself in front of him like a wall. Get out of my way, woman. This is none of your business. It's none of my business. They're my children, you monster. I screamed, not caring if the neighbors would hear. He tried to push me away, but I clung to him. In the previous weeks, I had hidden a pair of sewing scissors under the mattress, fearing that one day I would need to defend myself. I never thought it would come to this, but at that moment, as we struggled in the narrow hallway, I remembered them. I managed to escape him for a moment and ran to the bedroom. He came after me, laughing in that cruel way that he had developed in recent years. What do you think you're going to do, Finha? Do you think you can handle me? I grabbed the scissors from under the mattress and turned around, holding them tightly. Stay away from me and my children. He stopped at the door, surprised for a moment. Then he laughed again. You have no courage. Don't test me, Cicero, for God's sake, don't test me today. Something in my voice must have conveyed the seriousness of the threat, because he took a step back. At the same moment, I heard the front door open and voices. Mariana had managed to get out with Ricardo and call Judah. It was Mr. Joaquim, the neighbor from the house across the street, and two other men I didn't immediately recognize. What's all that shouting? Is everything okay, Mrs. Finha? Mr. Joaquim asked. Entering the room cautiously, Cicero completely changed his posture, as only predators know how to do. Suddenly, he was the charming and polite man everyone knew. It's nothing, Mr. Joaquim, just a couple's argument. You, my wife, sometimes get nervous, you know how it is. But Mariana, my brave girl, didn't let the lie prosper. He was hurting me, Mr. Joaquim. He was doing something bad to me. The silence that followed those words, childish and direct, was like a thunderclap. Mr. Joaquim and the other men looked at Cicero, then at me, still holding the scissors, then at the children. Something in Mariana's eyes, in that genuine terror that no child could fake, must have spoken more than 1,000 testimonies. You'd better come with us, Mr. Cicero, said one of the men who I recognized as Inspector Assis. Shall we talk at the police station? That's nonsense. Cicero protested, but there was no longer the same power in his voice. It's the word of a confused child against mine. I'm a bank manager, a respected man in this city. And I'm the father of 3 girls, the police chief replied with a coldness that gave me some comfort. Let's resolve this properly. As they took Cicero away, Dona Carmenha, the neighbor Mariana had run to, hugged me tightly. Everything will be okay now, Finha. It's over. But I knew it wasn't over. It was just the beginning of another ordeal. In a small town in the countryside, in the 1960s, an accusation like that against a man of position like Cicero would not be easy to sustain. Everyone knew the power that men like him had, the connections, the respect they commanded just because they were men in positions of authority. At the police station, I was treated as if I were the criminal. Are you sure? You can't have misinterpreted the situation. Your husband is such a well-liked man in the community. The questions were full of doubt, of veiled judgment. Mariana was spared a formal interrogation thanks to the intervention of Father Romero, who arrived at the police station as soon as he heard what had happened. This child has already been through enough trauma. If they need her testimony, let it be done with due care and in the presence of a doctor. Cicero spent only one night in jail. The next day he was released after paying bail. The town was full of gossip. Could it really be true? Or did Dona Finha make it up because he had someone else? That girl was always very imaginative. You'll see. She got things mixed up. A hard-working man like Cicero can't be true. It was Dona Carmenha who welcomed us into her home the following days. I didn't have the courage to go back to my own house, afraid that Cicero would show up there. My children were scared, especially Mariana, who woke up screaming every night. It's okay, my love, I said, hugging her tightly to my chest. Mommy won't let anyone hurt you again, ever again. But how could I fulfill this promise? I had nowhere to go. I had no money saved, and I had no family in the city who could help me. My parents had already passed away and my siblings were scattered, each with their own difficulties. That was when I received the visit that would change the course of our story. Father Romero showed up at Dona Carmenha's house one afternoon, accompanied by a well-dressed woman in her 60s, with an air of calm authority that immediately inspired confidence in me. Dona Finha, this is Dona Augusta Becerra, the director of the school for girls in Caruaru. She introduced the priest. She had heard of her situation and came to offer help. Dona Augusta extended her hand to me and when I took it I felt a comforting firmness. My dear, Father Romero told me about your case. I am here to offer you a job as a teacher at our school and housing for you and your children in the teacher's dormitory. It is 3 hours away from here, far enough for you to start over. I could not hold back the tears. It was as if Our Lady had heard my prayers. Desperate. But why don't you even know me? Dona Augusta smiled, a sad and understanding smile. Let's just say that I recognize your situation better than I would like. 20 years ago, a young teacher, in circumstances similar to yours, crossed my path. I couldn't help her as I should have. She took her own life a week later. I swore that I would never again stand by and watch another woman suffer. A week later, under the protection of Father Romero and some good men from the community, we took the bus to Caruaru. I left behind the house, the furniture, almost all of our things. It didn't matter. What mattered were Mariana and Ricardo, sleeping peacefully on the bus seats, free, finally, from the terror that had become our home. As for Cicero, I later learned that he had been transferred from the bank to another city, far away. The scandal had been hushed up, like so many others involving men of position. There was no trial, no justice in the traditional sense, but we were free of him, and that was all that mattered at that moment. In the first months in Caruaru, Mariana barely spoke. She spent hours drawing dark, frightening scenes that broke my heart. Ricardo, too young to fully understand what had happened, adapted more easily to his new life. I worked hard, trying to prove my worth to Dona Augusta, trying to build a new home for my children. Little by little, with the support of a young doctor who worked at the school, Mariana began to open up. She began to talk about what had happened not only that night I witnessed, but before. I discovered with horror that the abuse had been going on for months, that my daughter had kept that terrible secret out of fear, shame, confusion. I told her that it was normal, Mom, that all parents did this to the daughters they loved, that it was our special secret. Her words, spoken in one of the sessions with the doctor, destroyed me. How could I not have noticed? How could I have let this happen under my own roof? Guilt consumed me. I spent sleepless nights, going over every sign I should have noticed, every change in Mariana's behavior that I ignored, attributing to the stress of the situation. Home. The normal changes of childhood. The doctor, Dr. Clarice, helped me understand that it wasn't my fault. Men like Cicero are experts at hiding their crimes, Mrs. Finha. They manipulate, threaten, create an environment of fear, where silence seems the only safe option. You did what you could and, most importantly, when you found out, you acted. Many women, out of fear or dependence, choose to see, not to act. You saved your daughter. They were words of comfort, but the scar from that night, from that discovery, has never completely disappeared. I carry it with me to this day, more than 5 decades later. Not as an open wound, not anymore, but as a reminder of the price we pay for blind trust, for chosen ignorance, for the belief that we truly know those we love. As I write these lines, I think about how many women are right now living similar situations. How many children are suffering in silence, believing that what is happening to them is normal, or worse, that it is somehow their fault. It is for these women, for these children, that I have finally decided to tell my story. Because sometimes all we need to find the courage to change our lives is knowing that we are not alone, that others have already gone through the same dark valley and managed to come out the other side. Not unharmed, not without scars, but alive and eventually healed. Our arrival in Keruara was like being reborn. The girls' school, run by Dona Augusta, was a place of order and peace, with its well-kept gardens and quiet hallways. My children and I were given a small apartment in the teachers' quarters, 2 bedrooms, a living room, kitchen, and a bathroom. It felt like a palace after what we had been through. The first few months were spent adapting and healing. Mariana began treatment with Dr. Clarice, who patiently and gently helped my daughter process the trauma she had experienced. Ricardo, only 2 years old, adapted easily to his new life, charming everyone with his smile and energy. As for me, I threw myself into work, teaching Portuguese and literature to elementary school girls, finding refuge for my tormented mind in the classroom routine. It was in 1971, almost 2 years after our arrival, that I realized a profound change in Mariana. One Sunday afternoon, we were sitting on the small balcony of our apartment. She, now 10 years old, was drawing in her notebook as she used to do. But something was different. The dark and scary drawings had given way to colorful scenes, flowers, butterflies, a house with open windows. "That's beautiful, daughter," I commented, feeling a hope blossom within my chest. "What is that you redrawing?" She looked up at me and, for the first time in a long time, I saw a glow that reminded me of the girl she had been before everything happened. "It's our home, Mom, the one we'll have one day." At that moment, I knew we were on the right path, that the worst part was perhaps behind us. It didn't mean the scars had disappeared. They would never disappear completely, but we were learning to live with them, to move forward in spite of them. Time passed, filled with work, my children's studies, the small everyday joys that I had barely noticed before and that now seemed precious. Ricardo started school, revealing himself to be an intelligent and curious. Mariana, although she still had difficult days, began to make friends among the students at school, to participate in activities, to smile more. In 1975, I received a letter that shook our newly found tranquility. It was from my older sister, who still lived in Garanhuns. Cicero had returned to the city and was looking for me. He had been drinking a lot and kept saying that he would get his children back, that you had no right to take them, my worried sister wrote. "Be careful, Finha." The fear returned, cold and familiar, settling in my stomach. I immediately looked for Dona Augusta, who after reading the letter held my trembling hands between hers. "Don't be afraid, Josefa. He can't reach them here. You have the protection of the school, the church, and now also my personal protection." She was right. Cicero never arrived in Keruara. I later learned that he was arrested for attacking a bank employee in a fit of rage and ended up dying in prison shortly afterwards, a victim of liver cirrhosis. I felt no joy at the news, no revenge, not even relief. What I felt was a strange sensation of closing a chapter, as if I could finally turn the page for good. In 1977, 10 years after Ricardo was born and 8 years after our escape, I received a proposal that would change our path again. The school was expanding and Mrs. Augusta invited me to take over the management of the new primary wing. It was a recognition of my work, of the dedication I had shown all those years. "You have a gift for leadership, Mrs. Finha," she told me. "And most importantly, she has compassion. That's exactly what we need to shape these girls." I accepted the challenge with a mixture of excitement and trepidation. I had never held a position of such responsibility, but I discovered that Dona Augusta was right. I had something to offer, a wisdom born of pain, a strength I had never known. Under my leadership, the elementary ward flourished. We implemented more modern teaching methods, bringing art and music into the curriculum, encouraging girls to think for themselves, to question, to dream, beyond the limits that society tried to impose on them. "An educated girl is a free woman" became the unofficial motto of our ward. It was what I believed deeply, what I wished I had learned earlier in life. Mariana grew up watching my work, absorbing those lessons. At 17, she surprised me by announcing that she wanted to study law. "I want to help women like us, Mommy." She said it with a determination in her eyes that filled me with pride. "I want them to know that they have choices, that they have rights." In 1980, when Mariana was accepted into the Recife Law School, I cried tears of joy and gratitude. My daughter, who had faced the worst kind of trauma, was transforming her pain into purpose. Ricardo, now 13, was already talking about becoming a doctor to take care of people, like Dr. Clarice took care of us, he said. The 1980s brought changes to Brazil and to our family. The country was breathing the first breaths of re-democratization. Women were beginning to occupy spaces that had previously been denied to them, and I, at 46, met Sebastião. He was a history teacher, a widower, with a kindness and integrity that at first frightened me. After Cicero, I had built high walls around my heart. I didn't believe I could trust a man again, much less love. Sebastião didn't pressure, he didn't demand, he didn't rush. With the patience of someone who knows the value of time, he gradually gained my trust. It took almost 3 years for me to accept his marriage proposal. "I'm not offering perfection, Finha," he said as he handed me a simple engagement ring. "Just honest love and a commitment to always respect who you are." We got married in 1985 in a simple ceremony in the school chapel. Mariana, already graduated and working as a lawyer, and Ricardo, then a medical student, were our godparents. Dona Augusta, already elderly but still lucid, gave us her special blessing. With Sebastião I learned that not all men are monsters, that it is possible to build a relationship based on mutual respect, understanding, and companionship. It wasn't easy. There were times when the past would come back like a wave, catching me off guard, and I would shut down, retreating to my safe place. He never complained, never got impatient. "Each one carries their scars, Finha," he said, "I'm here for the good times and the bad times, for the sunny days and the storms." We had almost 20 years together before cancer took him in 2004. They were years of learning, of growth, of a peaceful happiness that I never thought possible. His death left a void, but not an abyss. Unlike losing Cicero, which had been like escaping from prison, losing Sebastião was like saying goodbye to a good traveling companion, with gratitude for the miles shared. Today, at 85, I look back and see a life marked by extremes, a pain so deep it almost destroyed me and a joy so pure it redeemed everything. I see my children now as adults with children of their own. Mariana, a respected lawyer specializing in women's and children's rights. Ricardo, a dedicated pediatrician with the same gentle smile from childhood. I see my grandchildren growing up in homes where respect is the rule, not the exception, where they know they are loved unconditionally, that they are safe, that they have a voice. This is perhaps my greatest victory. Having broken the cycle of violence, having created a new story for our family. If there is one lesson I have learned in these 85 years, it is that suffering does not have to be the end point, that even from the darkest ashes something beautiful and strong can be born, that our story is not defined by others, no matter how powerful they seem, but by the choices we make in the face of adversity. For those of you who are watching and perhaps are going through your own valley of shadows, I want to say, you are not alone. There is a way out, there is a tomorrow. Healing may seem impossible now when the pain is so present, so acute. But trust me when I say it is possible to rebuild, it is possible to heal, it is possible to find joy again. If this story touched your heart, please like it, subscribe to the channel and share it with anyone you think needs to hear these words. And don't forget to join our WhatsApp group. The link is in the video description. There we share real stories of other ladies like me every day, words of faith and hope to start the day off right. It's a welcoming community where you can find support and friendship, because ultimately that's what saves us, knowing that we're not alone in our struggles, that others have walked through similar valleys and found their way back to the light.